Hey, this is Brann from Mastodon, and you're watching Heavy Consequence on Consequence of Sound.
Before we get into the new Medium Rarities album, I wanted to talk about take us through the last kind of 4 or 5 months for you as an individual and as a band, like where you were when what you were up to when the pandemic hit and what you've kind of been doing since.
Well, I guess luckily for us, it was our natural downtime and writing for whatever the next album is going to be. If you're in this world, you have a cycle, and the cycle is write, record, tour, repeat. So we were in the right section of our life for this. We had just sort of wrapped up. We weren't even going to go out last summer. We were going to write, but it came up to do this anniversary tour for Crack the Sky, one of our more like revered albums, I guess. And we had put together this visual show, and it made sense to go out with Coheed, so we did it. And it was really fun, and it was fun to play that album as a whole again. And so after that ended, we kind of took a breather from, each other and just, chill for a minute, go back home, be with your family, and then commence writing. And I don't even remember when that started to happen, but it was like, probably pretty soon after. We say we're going to take all this time off, and then we end up calling each other like, hey, I got a riff, or let's get together and jam, or but we vowed to kind of take it slow and just let everything happen real organically, because we've been a band for 20 years, and we've been on tour for those 20 years, if not more. And we try to take breaks when we can. So, but yeah, so basically, I think in March, when things got locked down, we were really just sort of in the thick of demoing in our studio that we have here in the West End of Atlanta. We have a rehearsal space that we went in, like about 3 years ago. We went in together as a band and bought a building and tricked it out into like 20 something rehearsal spaces for different bands to rent rehearsal spaces, ourselves included. So we just started demoing there for months before that, before March happened. And I went down to Florida for my birthday, March 19th.
Wow.
And I think 2 days later, everything went into lockdown. So I got back home and I got situated. And so we didn't see each other as far as Mastodon guys, the band. We didn't go to the studio. We didn't do anything for probably 3 months, or maybe 4 months. Into June, that's when we started doing stuff again, like kicking around the ideas again. So we took that big long pause, like everybody, like most people,
Yeah, I know Bill said in a recent interview that the band had roughly like 20 rough tracks, like around the time that the pandemic, or 20 or more. Is that fair to say? And are you guys kind of in the process of narrowing it down, or you're still kind of working on those 20 or plus?
I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, we've added to the pile. So now there's like 30 or 35 songs. I don't know. It's so dumb. But so we really need to but I swear we're getting closer to that moment of like like the refrigerator's so packed, you need to really deal with it and get in there and be like, okay, this is old and needs to go in the garbage, Yeah. So we're close to that moment. It's fun to look around the corner, and discover new things. But we'd be better off if we just sat and were like, okay, these are great. how can they be better? You know, we really like these songs. These are the songs for the album.
Yeah.
You know, what can we do to improve these? You know, deal with it. So that's what we're doing right now. Is we really are zeroing in on the stuff that is definitely going to make the album. But you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to. It's tough because we've had so much time that now, and we usually don't. And so now it's like, yeah, you know, you have to have those kind of hard conversations with, you know, getting rid of stuff and you know, maybe it goes on the next album, but after this one, or maybe, I feel like we have one in the chamber, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Scott from Neurosis told me one time it's never good to have one in the chamber, you know, as far as an album is concerned. And I've always kind of felt like that was something I needed to pay attention to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The wise man once said, you know what I mean? So, but I don't know, maybe it's okay. We've always had like riffs in the chamber, you know, we've always had like song ideas in the chamber. And we would like, you know, like for instance, the first riff that you hear on Emperor of Sand is a 10-year-old riff. Like
wow.
that thing's been sitting forever, and it just never had a home. So it never had like a full song to call home.
I know, you know, Mastodon albums often, you know, center around a theme or a concept. Is there a focus around which this new material is centering?
Yeah. There's a focus for sure. I don't know if that it's like, it will be a specific narrative once everything comes in more into focus. But, you know, I don't know how you sidestep this pandemic. I don't think any artist is going to be able to really, you know, it's going to inform everyone's work, you know, and that's just another part of the reality that we live in, you know, at the current moment, and which I think is okay, you know. And I do think that there'll be some really amazing art that comes out of this, you know. There has to be. People have been sequestered and quarantined for so long that it helps. And I think it helps artists, you know, to some extent, if you haven't been sick or had to deal with, you know, the loss of a loved one. Even if you have dealt with the loss of a loved one, that also informs great art, you know, more so than it doesn't, especially if that's what you do if that's what you do, if that's how you deal with any kind of horrible situation in your life. If that's got to create something good, you know, that's the silver lining of it all, I guess. But I don't know that it'll be like literal, you know what I mean? We've also had we've had some things go down over the last year or so. Like, you know, we lost our good friend and manager, Nick John. So he deserves an album for sure.
Yeah, I met Nick at least one or two times. Great guy, really great guy.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah,
cool.
I was heartbroken when that news came through. But
yeah, I still kind of just can't believe it. Sucks.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
here we are.
Yep. And here we are, and you know, you're about to release this album, Medium Rarities, and it's a compilation of, you know, rare tracks, covers, soundtrack songs, but you also have this brand new song, Fallen Torches, that I know was written for a winter tour of Europe, but never was released. So it's actually first time fans are hearing it. Can you talk about that? It has Scott Kelly on it, and just how that song came together, and just maybe talk about it a little bit lyrically and musically.
Well, that song came together. It was right after we had finished phase 2 of our building that we bought. And so we put a studio in there in the basement. And when everything was hooked up and everything was kind of finalized with that, I set my drums up, we mic'd them up. We're like, let's get some sounds. Let's see what we're working with. You know what I mean? And so basically that song was a tester for the studio to see what we had, to make sure that everything was working and everything was good. And we're like, we should record something and just see what we're working with. Because the ultimate goal for us is to be able to record albums out of there for ourselves. You know what I mean? To be able to record at the level that we have been recording for, the last bunch of records. So that, we can attract producers or whoever to come to the studio and work out of there if they needed to, like for ourselves, but also for anybody else that wants to, professional bands that want to record or bands that are in the practice facility that want to record. There's a recording studio there with an awesome engineer. And, if you are rehearsing there, it's a cool thing. So we wanted to see what we had, and we didn't really have a song prepared. We didn't have anything fully written. We had bits and pieces, shrapnel. So I went over to Bill's house, and we went in his basement where we do a lot of writing, and sat down there. I said I have a couple of riffs, and he had a couple of riffs, and we put them all together. Fallen Torches was born. We recorded it for real over at our studio. And then we put some vocals down, and then we knew that Scott was coming into town to do like rehearsals for an upcoming European tour where we were going to play like our set for an hour and then do a set of all the Scott Kelly stuff. So he came and he heard the song, he liked it, and he wanted to get in on it. So he sang some stuff on there. And we're like, okay, well, it's done. It's finished. It's like mixed and everything. So we can just like release it, and we'll fold it into this tour and it'll be great. Yeah. And so we said we were going to do that. And 2 weeks into the tour, it still wasn't released. And we were like, what's the holdup? What's happening? And I don't know what happened, to be honest with you. Yeah. It was like bureaucracy, red tape, something like that. I don't know. And we had talked about it in the press and everything. So we were like, oh man, foot and mouth.
Yeah.
So it just sort of disappeared, We didn't know what to do with it. We were like, do you put it on the next album? And like, I don't know. Is it, it depends on what the next album sounds like. We're very like conscious of, releasing an album that's like, mm-hmm. We worked on it for this amount of time. Then we recorded it. It was fresh. Then we released it. We don't really have any stragglers from another recording session that doesn't sound like the rest of the album. I know that other groups do that, but we're very like album oriented. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess that's like us not being able to get out of our own way. But so our manager, Kristen, came up with this idea she's like, you guys got to have all these like B-sides, and you have like all these covers and stuff. Like, why don't we compile them and put out an album, especially during this time period when people are kind of wanting new stuff. They're definitely wanting a new Mastodon song if you're a Mastodon fan. And they know this one exists, so we should give that to them, and then give them a bunch of other stuff that they haven't been able to get for a while, like the Aqua Teen Hunger Force song, or the Orion Metallica cover, stuff that's like available but only on like YouTube, and maybe not the best quality. Here it is on vinyl. It's all together. It's kind of cool. I got listened to the whole thing. I wasn't sure about it at first. I was like, I don't know, do those all work as an album? But it's kind of an interesting listen, especially maybe for me. We've been a band for 20 years. It's kind of cool to hear all that stuff all together. Like, I like it.
Now, you mentioned, it's 20 years since the band formed, right? The band formed in 2000. So obviously the timing of this compilation is pretty cool. And then just made me want to maybe go back, if you can kind of just briefly, like now that 20 years are kind of, do memories come back of that first, meeting of the band? I know like the story is that, was it you and Bill met Brent and Troy at a High on Fire show? Is that correct? And it kind of things took off. Can you just maybe just really?
I just met Brent there. I didn't meet Troy, but their band opened up for High on Fire. It was like a house show. This house called the Parasite House I don't know, maybe they there's this whole network of underground DIY houses that do shows. My house in Rochester, New York, was a house called Club Ron, and we would have shows there and stuff, so there was a house called the Parasite House here in Atlanta, and High on Fire played there in their basement, and those guys opened up, and it was their like last show, I guess. I remember talking to Brent, and they knew who me and Bill were just because we were in Today's the Day.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in town, and they knew that we were looking to start something or get something together. And Brent said, our band's breaking up. Our singer's moving to Austin. So, we'll be available basically. And that night there was a huge ice storm that happened in Atlanta. The whole city of Atlanta was out of power for almost 2 weeks. Not the whole city, but certain sections were out of power. So we didn't get together for real until a couple weeks later. So it's kind of a mid-January 2000, right when I had first moved there. We got together. I remember. I remember it. I remember going to Elmire, this Mexican restaurant bar that Bill worked at, before going to jam for the first time with Brent. And Brent got like in a fight with the cook and was out in the street, like boxing style, like gonna fight this guy. I was like, what is happening? It's kind of funny. And then we went to jam.
You knew what you were getting into with Brent then from the beginning then, I guess, because I've interviewed him a couple of times, and he's definitely a character, and I guess you got that early on. No,
he's actually a sweetheart. He's got a heart of gold for sure. But yeah, he's got some stuff like everybody else. He's wild, but that's why we love him. He's a wild dude. But yeah, I was warned several times by different people. They're like, don't get in band with that guy, and I was like, why not? He's crazy. He'll do this. He'll do that. I'm like, okay. I mean, everybody's crazy.